So I'm going to keep this video short because it's a basic idea, but it's an important one. Repeated games are really different from one-shot games. This is one of the insights from game theory that really helps inform a lot of how we think about contracts. So if we have people who are contracting with each other one time, then they're worried about how courts are going to enforce things, they're thinking about what kind of damages they'll have to pay if they breach. But generally speaking, they're going to be looking to get as much out of that one transaction as they can. So if they can cheat a little bit and get away with it, they're going to try to do that, right? Now, if we have repeated games, repeated interactions, people who are contracting with each other in a long-term relationship, even if courts are not going to be strict about enforcing certain things, they don't want to try to cheat each other and cut corners, right? Because they're going to be working with these people for a long time going forward. They want to have that good, trusting relationship. It's really a valuable part of this whole thing. So repeated games are totally different than single-shot, one-shot games. So in game theory, we do think about repeated games as infinite. The reason we do that is because there's something called an endgame problem, where if you have repeated games, but it's a finite number, it may be a really big number, but as long as it's a finite number, when you're in that very last game, it looks like a one-shot game. So people are going to want to kind of cheat, right? So if they're going to cheat in the very last period of this finite number of games, well, the time before that, they're actually going to want to cheat because they know that the last game they're going to cheat. Well, what happens is you basically unravel the whole chain, because starting at the back with a backwards induction sort of solution strategy, you look at what people are going to do and they're going to cheat in the last game. Well, that means they're going to cheat the game before that, and the game before that, and the game before that, all the way until it unravels to the first game. So the whole chain comes unraveled. In the real world, we know that there aren't infinitely long relationships, infinite number of repeated games, but it's a useful mathematical tool with game theory to model these infinite repeated games, because it gives us a lot of insights about how we can get parties cooperating with each other, and we do see a lot of long-term relationships, repeated games in contracts, and when we have those, we're much less likely to end up in court over them because the parties are much more likely to work with the trust that they have and want to keep that goodwill going, so they'll come up with deals. Even if it hurts them in the moment, they know that it's worth it in the long term to keep this relationship going. So they don't need to get courts involved. They don't necessarily want to get courts involved. And so that's a big difference between contracts that are kind of a one-off sort of thing versus contracts that are dealing with long-term relationships. And we tend to see less sort of strategic behavior with breach, cutting corners, when we're talking about long-term relationships.